I just wasn't going to allow my kids to grow up without their father.
And having absolutely no relationship with him, it hurts. It really does.
I'm a business owner. I'm an elected official. But the courts didn't think I was good enough to raise my kids.
There could be no system that would be designed to hurt the family more than the family court system in its present form.
They're not protecting the kids because they are cutting one parent out of the life of a child just because two adults can't get along.
What do people do when their children are taken away? She said they pay their child support and shut up and walked away. And I thought that was the most accurate encapsulation of my experience in family court.
I've been through 43 false allegations, not one conviction, not one arrest.
Lawyers, judges have financial gain. Social workers and people that are in the community, our jobs really is to clean up after the mess that happens from courtrooms.
And we are back.
We are back, bumblebees.
We are in studio, new studio, for the first time recording, and of course my phone's going off. We have the writers of We the Parents, which is a documentary that I found on YouTube thanks to our Discord, and watched the entire thing, related to it greatly, and reached out and was like, "Hey, I would love to have you guys on," and they agreed. Suckers. No, I'm just kidding. But you're here, and can you guys just introduce yourselves, tell them what you do, where they can find you? Go ahead, dear.
Sure. I'm Elizabeth McNeese, and this is my husband, Mike McNeese. We are filmmakers. We own our own production company called Echo Films. We're based in Ohio, and we primarily work with corporate and commercial clients. But We the Parents was our first foray into documentary filmmaking. We've done some short films, but we are really motivated by the topic of family courts. And so we felt the best use of our talents would be coming together and making a documentary.
And we have 6 kids between the two of us.
Holy wow. You need 3 more, you have a baseball team.
Yeah, literally, yeah, that's a good idea. We're literally the Brady Bunch. She has 3, I have 3. So that keeps us plenty busy, but of course the kids have other parents that they go to, so that frees us up almost half of our time so that we can focus on our work, and that enabled us to travel around a little bit and do the work that we needed to get some interviews from out of state for the documentary. So.
Did you guys take on that project because you could relate to it? Because you guys both have children from previous relationships?
Yeah, and both of us have gone through family court, and we both had very different experiences, which I'm sure we'll chat about. But once we started to get interested in, hey, how can we affect some change in the family court arena, it became pretty apparent that my story, which is not a good one, was actually not as bad as I thought it was. And there are some horrible, horrible stories coming out of family courts all over the country, all over the world. Yeah. So doing what we do, we thought, how can we affect change? And, we do video and film work. So that's what we wanted to put that together to enable us to, while we're traveling for our paid work, hey, who do we know in these areas that we can talk to and get some content for the film? And we just kept doing that for 2 years, almost 3.
Yeah.
And finally decided we're done filming, and we put it together and sent it out to the world.
So this is something you guys funded yourselves?
That's right.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
We have no outside funding source whatsoever. We obviously have resources at a couple organizations, like Americans for Equal Shared Parenting is a big proponent of equal parenting outcomes in family court, as is National Parents Organization, their child-focused research organization that supports children having equal time with their kids. So they helped us with contacts and
The research.
Yeah, a lot of research, but outside of that, the financial burden was 100% on us, which we're happy to donate that type of resource to trying to make a change in the arena.
Yeah, and we did a lot of the work ourselves. So we both edit. We did bring in an extra editor to kind of finish it because towards the end it was dragging on. We do have day jobs, we do work with real life clients. So this passion project was a side project. And then after a certain amount of time, it's like, okay, we have to wrap this up. So hiring the editor was the only extra financial burden. Everything else was our resources, our talents, our time.
I think out of everything that we do, editing is the worst.
Yeah, editing is
It's
mundane.
so time consuming.
Yeah.
I experienced it. I don't want to relive it.
And you have to sit down indoors and I'm not a huge fan.
No.
So she knows that.
So Florida recently passed a law, I think it took effect in January, that it's 50-50 now. And you have to have a burden of proof that one of the parents is unfit to lose that 50-50. Is that something that's happening a lot in other states? Or, with what you guys have seen, is that a new transition?
So Florida is the 5th state to have an equal presumption. There are 38 other states right now that have pending bills. So I would definitely say it is a trend, but it is an uphill battle. We have opponents of this type of legislation who are very, very powerful. The family law industry it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And when you go through a divorce or separation, you're not just hiring an attorney. They're bringing in all their buddies. They're bringing in custody evaluators. They're bringing in guardian ad litems. They're bringing in psychologists. They're bringing in forensic evaluators and investigators. And it's a very expensive endeavor to separate from a partner, especially when children are involved. So the opposition is the family law industry, the Bar Association. They have deep, deep pockets. So this type of legislation has been consistently introduced, but it wasn't until 2018 when Kentucky passed theirs that it was successful, and slowly states are getting, like I said, they're the 5th state.
What are the other 4?
So you have Kentucky was the first, and then Arkansas, and then you have West Virginia, Missouri, just passed theirs last year, right around the same time that Florida did.
And then Arizona has
kind of, it's not an equal presumption. It's not a very explicit equal presumption, but their law says that the courts have to, when it comes to parenting time, they have to maximize the time with each parent, which is being interpreted by a lot of courts as an equal arrangement, but it's not an explicit. So depending on who you ask, it may or may not count. In Ohio, which is where we are from, I've spent the last few years spearheading that effort for our bills there. We have a current bill in Ohio called House Bill 14. Last General Assembly, it was House Bill 508. Same usual opponents. We found that the Bar Association, they have a very powerful lobbyist. Everyone is scared of the judges and the attorneys at the State House. So we have a long way to go in Ohio, but I'm very familiar with the language that is often used. And so what Florida has, it's an equal presumption that says that it's a rebuttable presumption, meaning that the court's going to start with the presumption that both parents are fit and they're both going to raise the children equally unless there's evidence that that would not be in the child's best interest. Arkansas is the only state, though, that has done it fully the right way, I think. So Arkansas raised their standard of evidence. So right now, civil courts are very different than criminal courts. Like if you're charged with a crime and you go into criminal court, there are some presumptions that protect your constitutional rights. You're presumed innocent until proven guilty. You can have an attorney. If you can't afford one, they'll provide an attorney. There's very clear due process and your rights are protected and you're just not presumed guilty. In family court, which is civil court, the burden of proof is on the person being accused. So you're presumed guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And so divorces and separations are really messy. There's a lot of emotions involved. So a lot of times you'll make accusations against the other parent because you don't want to lose your kids. The motive, a lot of times the motive is to hurt your ex, but really I think the bigger motivation is you don't want to lose your kids. And so there are a lot of accusations thrown out, and the standard of evidence in civil court is the lowest standard of evidence that there is in any court. It's called the preponderance of the evidence. What that means is that the court's going to listen to both sides, and there doesn't have to be physical evidence of any kind. They just have to use their discretion to decide who to believe. And so when you have a he said, she said, they could get it drastically wrong, and there's no recourse for a parent who's been accused of something and they're innocent. And of course, there's no presumption of innocence. So Arkansas's 50-50 bill increased the standard of evidence to clear and convincing evidence. And that, as you, I'm sure, can imagine, clear and convincing means that the juror or the judge has to find that this is clear and convincing evidence, not just he said, she said. And they're the only state to do that. Florida's maintains the preponderance of the evidence. So this is just my opinion. What I think, having a 50-50 presumption without raising the standard of evidence doesn't solve a lot. It does at least, level the playing field, that the court has to presume that's where you start. But it's really easy to get away from that with a false allegation or even an insinuation that the other parent might not be safe or may not even be, because it's not always just about being safe or being a dangerous parent. It could just be you have different parenting styles. And so it's up to the court to decide what's best for that child. And the only standard they use is the best interest of the child standard. The problem with the best interest of the child standard is it's not defined. So it's whatever the court feels is best, including parenting styles, how to parent your children. So if you have two parents who have disagreements on how to raise a child, guess who decides? The court decides. And they don't need evidence, and they have no guidance statutorily on how to do that.
So that's going to change from judge to judge too then.
Yes.
Because so in the tattoo industry, laws from the health department is open for interpretation. So every single time you get a new health inspector, the rules change.
Yep.
So I've had a tattoo studio for 14 years in the area that we're in right now. I've owned 7 of them total. And every single time we get a new health inspector, they come in, do their inspection, and change everything. And then sometimes they'll go to a new area, and the other person will come back and be like, "What are you doing?" And they'll try to write us up on fines. And I'm like, "Well, we had to adjust, and now we have to adjust again. That's fine. We'll make the changes." So that same thing happens with judges. If it's open to interpretation, if a judge has a specific parenting style and feels that the other one is not okay, and then somebody else has the exact same case and goes to a different judge, so there's no way of saying like, "Hey, you got this, bro. Like, you should go fight for your kids," because
that's right.
That's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think we are okay with judges interpreting laws and regulations and statutes. What I'm not okay with is it's not even abuse of discretion. They have discretion written into the laws that allows them to apply their values over the parents of the parents of these children. If you have if you have 2 parents, one's Catholic, the other one is Jewish, well, then you end up in front of a Catholic judge. Well, that's going to change the parenting schedule, obviously, in favor of who they relate the most with. So that's where, like Elizabeth was talking about, the preponderance of the evidence and the clear and convincing evidence. The judges, the magistrates, the bar association hates when we require evidence in court, because that takes away discretion for the judge or the magistrate to kind of apply their own narrative or story or values to how they end up ruling a case.
Do you think that could be a power trip for some judges?
I personally think so.
Okay.
It gives, if you are interested in meddling with someone's life, then yeah, having the ability to make laws on how these people parent their children and when they can see their children, how close they can be in proximity to their children, things that they can say. There's all sorts of ways that a judge can create an order in a decree to limit your ability to parent your own children.
So with what you guys have seen, have you seen judges abuse their power in situations like that?
Well, going back to what he just said, so they're not really abusing the power. Sometimes they are.
Yeah.
Okay. But they have the power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to abuse something that you have by law. I mean, they've been given that discretion, and discretion is simply put as their opinion, their judgment. Okay. So if the law doesn't tell them how to act or what to do, they use their discretion to decide what to do. And that's where the human element comes in. So, when we were wanting to pass reform, what really has to happen first and foremost is we have to wield back that discretion. The judges don't like it. So I've been doing a lot of advocacy work in Ohio and working with legislators, and we've met with a lot of judges. And they've said some pretty horrendous things in our meetings behind closed doors.
The judges have?
The judges have, absolutely. One judge, it's a woman. I know her personally, and she's a wonderful person. But she's very jaded by the work that she does. And she definitely views that if they're in front of me, if I have parents in front of me, there's a reason, and they're not good parents. And it's my job to fix it. It's my job to save the children from these horrible people. Wow. And that's a very jaded way of looking at the world. But I don't think she looks at herself as a bad guy. I think truly in her heart, she thinks she's a savior, that she is coming in and making the best of a terrible situation. Mm-hmm. And so some, I think, they recognize that they have power, but they feel like they've earned it and they deserve that power, and they know what's best, right? Because they're neutral. Mm-hmm. They're not.
They're supposed to be neutral.
Right, right.
Yeah, it sounds like they're a little bit out of touch with things.
Yeah.
Because I would bet if they could see the aftermath of their decisions and the way that it does affect the families and the children especially, they would think it differently.
That's a good point, because and right now there, at least in Ohio, and I think probably most states, there's no performance checks and balances to make sure that the outcome of a case is followed up on. We don't even know in Ohio, and again in most states, what the outcomes of the cases are, just because they don't record it. We don't know if mom is getting custody more often than dad. We have other ways of figuring that out, but the courts don't record that. They don't take notes of the outcomes of their cases, so we don't know how they're performing.
Wow.
We have to kind of dig in other ways using like census data and things like that to try to figure that out, because I think they're scared of what we would find if they were to actually record the outcomes of their cases.
I'm pretty sure that they record it here, because through mediations, they normally log parental visitations and things like that. So I know that it does become public record after the divorces happen in Florida. I don't know if that would be something that would benefit you guys. I want to touch on a couple of things before I forget. One, with the judge thing, we view life through our own cognitive biases, right? So like you said, it could be a religion thing. It could be something as simple as having a bad morning with your woman or your husband and then having a bias that day because,
my wife made me mad.
Right. So that really could affect people's lives.
Right. A story could come forward where he relates to it, be like, oh, my wife did that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I know what this man's going through.
Yeah. I think that having clear defined expectations and rules written into a law, like you're saying, would go a long way. Two things that you guys said earlier that kind of disgusted me. One of them was industry.
Yeah.
You called it a fucking industry. These are people's lives. Right. So as people are men, and I was going to pull the stats up, but I'm afraid you guys will hear the clicking on the keyboard. So I'm not going to pull it up right now. But when men lose custody of their children, then the rate goes to like 50 or 60% of men stop seeing their children after 1 year, because it gets so difficult for them to actually show up. And like now that the 50-50 thing is the thing, I don't know how that's going to work in Florida. But I know that there have been women that I know personally who have made allegations just to make it so the man can't see the kid anymore. So like now the supervised visit. And I personally have seen court documents after mediations that say you can see your kids from 12 to 4 on Saturday. So you get less than a day, a month with your child.
16 hours a month. Yep. I remember that. I cried over that. I couldn't imagine.
But I never put together the industry aspect of it. I know that family law is expensive. I've had a divorce. She's had a divorce. I've seen the money that goes into that. But I would have never correlated that you guys have lobbyists going against these bills trying to prevent. You would think that I guess that would eliminate that. The easier the case, the less billing hours. Right. That sucks.
If there are laws on the books that orchestrate how a separation or divorce is going to happen, there's less work for these attorneys to do. And now the average fee is, we're talking $500 per hour.
Yeah.
And then you have both parents paying that. So the kids are the ones losing out because, they're the ones, if you're parents, that's where a lot of your money ends up going. So yes, it is just in Ohio, I think we calculated that it's $9 billion a year that parents are paying in family law fees. Yep. Just in Ohio. And I think nationwide, it's been estimated to be well over 50 billion.
That's insane.
That disgusts me.
You were right on the billable hour though.
Yeah,
because we were $4.50 an hour with our lawyer for just about everything.
Yep.
That's which is crazy to me because there's people out there who don't make that in a week, and then they up in a court system.
But what else are you going to do? Because you're talking about your kids,
right?
And the the laws, like we've discussed a lot, the laws in most places eliminate the dad from seeing the kids except for every other weekend. That's the standard where we're at in Ohio. But of course you're going to. I did. I paid out every dime I could, even dimes I didn't have, to try to maximize my time with my kids.
The other thing that you guys said was values. And that's something that we preach on a lot. That's basically what our podcast is about. It's about traditional values and being able to be a good person. A friend of mine who's a police officer said that you realize that you're making money just telling people to be a good person, right? And I'm like, I'll take it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But the idea that you can have a court system set up where, like I said earlier, two different judges could have two different sets of values, it's going to be very different. I don't know. I wasn't prepared to hear either one of those things when we sat down today. I really thought we were going to talk about how hard it was for men to get custody of their kids, and that was going to be the conversation.
Yeah.
And this went in a very different direction. So now I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but I'm enjoying myself. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it makes sense if you think that it's an industry. When we hear about Hollywood, it's the Hollywood industry.
Right.
But we know it's people who are showing up on TV and they're making the songs and all those kinds of things. I think everything in the world is just one massive industry and we're just cattle.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and you have to consider the fact that, judges were once attorneys and follow the money, right? And I'm not going to say that all judges are financially corrupt, but what I will say is that a lot of their campaigns are funded by attorneys, the same attorneys who appear before them representing their clients. Family courts are notorious for ex parte hearings, and those are hearings between an attorney and the judge, and the plaintiff is not present. The parents are not present. These are private, closed-door hearings where big decisions are being made about children, and the parents aren't even there. You don't know what goes on in those meetings. And again, you have attorneys who are fighting each other, meaning they're representing, parents who are opposing parties, but these are the same people who go out to drinks together, the Bar Association, it's an association. It's a professional organization. So these are people, they're peers. And he could probably speak to it more closely, but in his case, for instance, he wanted to challenge the report of the guardian ad litem. His attorney wouldn't do it.
Can you define that ad litem?
So a guardian ad litem is a court-appointed counsel who they are hired by the court. They think that this is someone who's hired to represent the children. They're not. Guardian ad litems are hired to represent the court's interest, but their job is to investigate and make a recommendation to the court on what is in the best interest of the child. Again, best interest not being defined, by the way.
So this is the same thing as somebody who gets a criminal charge and is a court-appointed lawyer? Is that basically the same thing?
No, because they represent the court.
Okay.
And the parents have to pay for the guardian ad litem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they come in and they'll do an assessment and they'll make a recommendation. So the court's ultimate job in all courts is to make a decision in the best interest of the child. And that is as vague as it really is. And that, it doesn't get any more specific than that. So you can imagine the problem with that alone. Your job is to make a decision that is in the best interest of the child. Well, even the parents sometimes can't even agree on what's best for their own child. So how would you expect a stranger who's never met them to make that decision? But that's their job. Well, they can't sit and interview all the parents, all the children, all the friends and acquaintances who might have information about the case. So instead, they appoint a guardian to do that. So it's like an investigator. And they'll come in, they'll interview the parents, they'll interview the children alone and with the parents. They're supposed to interview anyone else the parents may think is relevant, like maybe a teacher or a doctor. Most of them don't. Most guardian ad litems don't do a whole lot, but they do bill as much as an attorney does per hour. But their report is going to be what the judge uses when they make their decision. So that's a very important report. So if you have a guardian who has their own ideals, sometimes a guardian is very skewed towards mothers. They tend to believe moms if they make an accusation. Or it could be the flip side where you have a guardian who is, doesn't like women and maybe feels like men get the shaft, and they do a lot in family court. So their own personal biases might, pepper in that report, but that's all the judge is really going to see and consider. So he had a,
So now we have another person
Yes.
involved with values and opinions.
and they're almost always appointed. I mean, it's if you have a dispute between parents and custody related, they will always hire at least one person, and that is going to be a guardian ad litem or maybe a custody evaluator, depending on the state. But they're at least going to bring in one other person who is just as expensive as the attorney. You have no choice in whether to use that person or not. You have to. The court says you have to hire a guardian ad litem, and by the way, you're going to pay for it. But
They don't appoint it though. They don't tell you who you have to hire.
Oh, they can.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
The attorneys can have a say so in it, but the court ultimately, the judge or magistrate gets to decide who the guardian ad litem is going to be.
Yeah.
So you're taking input from everybody but the parents.
Pretty much.
Well, yeah, but when you look at this now, this is like criminal activity.
It
When you
is.
really think about it, because now they get to decide who's going to do the. So if you have somebody who has very strong feminist beliefs, mom should have the kid all the time.
Yep.
Fuck all men. We're gonna hire an ad litem, as you said, and then you get a lawyer that's doing the whole thing, and all three of them are going out to drinks and having this bar association group. Well, we're gonna keep the people who have the same feelings we have, so that we can get the outcome that we want to get. This sucks.
Yeah. I was thinking, as Elizabeth was speaking, how is this legal?
Yeah.
How is this able to get passed through so many hands? It's just, there's so much corruption in everything, and weak people allow this to happen.
I don't think people know, because I've gotten
Really?
more information in the last 25 minutes than I've gotten from watching documentaries. I didn't know any of this.
Well, think about what we learned in like 5th grade about, civil history and civil law and stuff like that. And this is happening across the country. All of these states trying to pass their bills. The people fighting it are the judges. Judges are the interpreters of the law, not legislators. And, legislators are the ones who are creating the law. Well, in Ohio, we have a law that we're trying to pass. Judges are testifying against a law. That, in and of itself, is a conflict of interest because they have to abide by the laws. Now they want to have input on how the laws are created. Not only that, the judges in Ohio have written their own bill about changing family law and changing the courts. So now they're literally trying to write their own laws that governs themselves and the attorneys.
Yeah.
That sounds like...
It's a cartel is what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like to me. Organized crime.
Yep. And you don't have a choice. I mean, as a parent, if you
processing
love
so
your
much.
children, you're going to fight. I mean, I think it's so easy to get lost in the drama of it. If you're on the outside and you're watching someone go through it, they're very emotional, and these stories sound crazy. Like and it's easy to justify. If it's not you, it's easy to justify it as, there's got to be more to the story.
Right.
There's two sides to every story. Or, listen, they wouldn't take your kids away if there wasn't something going on. And so we make all of these opinions about other people and assume that the parents are the problem. And so then people who aren't going through it can't relate, and it's just they compartmentalize those people as other people. And then the people who are in it are fighting each other, because it's easy to say, because there is data that shows that typically the custodial parent's the mom. Like, depending on the state, it's anywhere between 78 and 92%. Okay, so it looks like a bias, right? And so, you have the father's rights folks who are advocating for men, because there's a lot of research that shows how children are negatively impacted, not only in the short term, but long term when their dads aren't around, right? So that is legitimate concern and legitimate cause to fight for. But then the flip side of that is that there are also moms who have been in abusive relationships, and it's really easy for abusers to manipulate the current system and get rid of that good, safe, loving parent, because the system is so easy to manipulate. And so instead, what's happening is the people who are in it, men are fighting women, women are fighting men, want to make it about gender. And as long as, and this, I will die on this soapbox, as long as men and women are fighting about it and pointing fingers at the other sex, we're missing everything. Because what's really going on is the industry, okay? Because you can be a man and win if you have enough money and you have a ruthless enough attorney and you're willing to play dirty. And same thing goes for women. So it's not the parents. And when we talk with opponents legislatively, when we talk to the judges and we talk to the attorneys, they will say, and they're very consistent in their message, doesn't matter what state it is, the parents are the problem. And it's easy to point fingers at the parents because they are emotional. I mean, their whole life is falling apart. And then the system is, you feel like everything is against you. And it is. You're not crazy, but they'll call you crazy for being upset about that.
Or claim that you're an angry dad
Yeah.
when you're having your children taken away from you. What else? What else should make you
Of
angry?
course I'm fucking angry.
Yeah.
My kids are leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys do this. I'm angry. Like I'm literally sitting here in rage right now because I didn't know all of this. And you're right about the division. If you keep people fighting each other, the bigger picture will always get mixed. That's politics.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's the division that we've had in our country for the last 100 years.
So you said that, like, in that moment, their life is a mess. I bet a vast majority of people who are going through the court system experiencing this, their whole life has been a mess. Like, their childhood has been fucked up. Going into adulthood, they had no guidance. They probably got with somebody they shouldn't have. They had an accidental pregnancy, and now they have 3 kids because, well, we already had the one. I'm with them already. It's a system taking advantage of people who are already beaten down and broken. And it's
crazy to think about.
I'm absolutely flabbergasted. This literally, like you said, it sounds like a cartel.
It really is. And, you know, and like you said, not only are they at the worst moment of their life, everything, not only is everything falling apart, everything is being taken away from them.
Right.
You know, not to harp on my own story, because I actually had a decent one compared to a lot of people, but, you know, one day I'm at home with my kids. I have a place to sleep. And then 2 days later, I'm sleeping in my car. I am not allowed to see my children. I'm still forced to pay all of my current, at the time, my wife's bills and everything. And I don't know when I'm going to get to see my kids again. I have to turn in all my firearms. I don't have anywhere to sleep. So yeah, my life got flipped the fuck upside down. And I have to get those things back. At some point, I have to get my children back. I have to have a place to live. You know, I have to be able to afford food. So yeah, and not only is everything shitty, everything's gone. And, you know, we talk all the time. We'll sit on our front porch and just realize, wow, you know, we've built everything all over again because none of the stuff that we have in our home, even my kids, that I have 10 years ago. So it's a horrible time. And it's also, you're desperate just to get the building blocks of your life back together. And then the court is fighting you on it.
And it drags it out. I mean, the average case takes at least 2 years. Wow. So you're living in this, like,
limbo.
Yeah, limbo. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, and you can't do anything. You're totally powerless, you know. And your attorney is going to tell you, just do whatever they tell you. Just get it over with. Go through the motions.
Which is what they want you to do.
Ignore the fact that you're spending 20, 40, 60, 100,000. Some cases, like one of the guys in our film, you know, over $1 million.
Yeah, I saw that and threw up in my mouth.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was, what do you mean?
Yeah. And what else are you going to do? A lot of people give up, okay?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of deadbeat dads, for instance, who didn't have the money to keep going or the emotional strength to keep going. I mean, they stripped everything away from you. It's really hard to pick yourself up after that. And so people get emotional, but I want to go back to what you were saying is the system definitely takes advantage of people who are already down, but the system doesn't discriminate. Right. It's just worse on those people. For instance, a lot of the problems that we see in the criminal justice system for minorities, it's even worse in the family court system. Like those same, you know, perceived biases or biases that are in criminal court, everything is worse in family court. So, you know, Black dads are even less likely than white dads and even Hispanic dads to have custody of their kids. Like everything, all of the problems that we have are worse in family court. But not everyone who has issues, you know, struggles in family. Not everyone who goes through family court and struggles had issues. Right. I had a great life. I had a great childhood. No trauma. I feel like I was always a put together person, but I was in a very terrible marriage. And our experiences were very different. And I think it's because we weren't going to fight over the kids, but our divorce still took almost 2 years because of attorneys. Like we went into it, the first attorney I consulted with, I was like, listen, we already know we want to do 50-50. We just want to split everything. We just want to move on with our lives. And can you help us draw up that? And she's like, it was a female attorney. She's like, no, I can't represent both of you. I can only he's going to have to get an attorney. And so we started out wanting to work together. Attorneys got involved and dragged the whole thing out. And that was with us wanting to agree about the kids. So the system doesn't care who you are. Like
They forced division between you guys.
absolutely. Absolutely.
You can't be amicable.
I'm blown
They don't want you
away.
to be.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't even have that choice. Now I know, I've been advocating long enough that I know things now that I didn't know at the time. And no one in my family had gone through divorce, so it's not something I'd ever been exposed to. I had no idea how things were. Now I would do things differently. Now I know I could force that issue. We could have drawn up our own agreement, and then you don't even have to have an attorney in family court. You can go pro se and represent yourself, but you have to know what you're doing a little bit to do that, because you're going to be up against a terrible attorney probably on the other side who's going to just wipe the carpet with you because you don't know what you're doing. But nobody tells you, really, even your own attorney you're paying isn't being honest with you on how to get things to settle amicably or quickly. Like it's like they want to siphon as much of your resources as possible. They're basically taking your children's inheritance and your children's college funds and funding their own children's.
Yeah. It's crazy. It really does hurt. I think in all of that, everything that I just got from that, it hurts people who don't have money the most.
Yeah.
Because it's going to end up bankrupting them. It's going to make them not want to do this anymore. It's going to make them want to quit. And I think that speaks on the firearms statement. I didn't know that you had to turn in your firearms. Is that just like an Ohio thing? I've never heard of that.
That happens because there's this happens in a lot of cases. There's a civil protection order written, and it's pretty standard for couples that are separating that just can't get along, or if one of the parties claims that the other one could be dangerous.
Okay.
So that is literally, it's a retaining order.
Just a precaution.
Restraining order, where I have to stay away from my ex, and except for when we're exchanging the kids. But because of that, they said I had to turn in all of my deadly weapons, and this is right in the middle of deer season in Ohio. And then I also I couldn't have alcohol for a year or whatever it was, and I had to stay 500 feet away from my kids unless it was my time with my kids. And when I had time with my kids, I had to be supervised by my mom was the supervisor of my visits, just because she made some claims.
It's insane that somebody can tell you that you're not allowed to have alcohol for a year.
Right.
And you have to abide by that. Is Ohio fairly friendly with firearms?
They're actually getting better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we're the gunshine state.
Yes.
Florida is very, very lenient with our weapons.
Good for you guys.
I didn't know that was a thing. That blows my mind. You said, Elizabeth, you said that there's mediations that are happening between judges and lawyers behind closed doors. And I don't mean to go too far back, but I make notes because I have been hitting a lot. I forget. So is that something that parents are aware of? Do the judges and lawyers be like, hey, we're meeting with the judge Sunday, we're going to have lunch, and then fucking spill the beans? Or is this secretive? Because I didn't know that was a thing either. I mean, I assumed it happened, but...
Yeah. Ex parte hearings, which are those hearings behind closed doors when the parents are not present, they do happen a lot. And those are on the record, meaning the record shows that they happened.
Okay.
Sometimes they're scheduled. If it's an emergency order or an emergency ex parte, so it is possible for a parent, especially if you have a situation where you have a parent who is claiming to be a victim of domestic violence and they are imminently fearful for their safety, they can request an emergency ex parte hearing. And what that hearing is they'll go in, they'll tell the judge. In that situation, the parent is present, whoever's making the accusation. But the person who's being accused isn't even aware that the hearing has taken place. So the person making the accusation gets basically one-on-one time with an attorney and with the judge to tell them why they're imminently fearful for their safety. And the judge can, from that hearing, and they're not recorded, it's not a recorded hearing, okay, so it is behind closed doors, can make a decision right then and there, which is what happened to Mike, that, you know what, I'm going to issue a restraining order, and this other parent is not going to come. They don't require, it's not an evidentiary hearing, okay, so it's just the person telling their story to a judge and the judge making an emergency decision to get rid of that other parent. And then once that happens, it's nearly impossible to go backwards. And get, there are steps that you have to take. You have to prove yourself. You have to do supervised visitation. Depending on the judge, it could be for 6 months. It could be for years. I mean, they can do whatever they want. They have discretion. But those hearings, they tell you about. And then later on in the case, they still have those ex parte hearings. They just tell you, we're meeting with the judge later, and they'll tell you, and you can tell them if you have an attorney, what you want them to say. But you're not there to witness it. Okay. And so sometimes, which we saw, they'll come out of those meetings, hearings, and what the heck just happened? Why did you how did they get away with that? How did the other side get away with that? And so you don't know what happens. And there's no transparency, and I don't know how you can trust somebody, even if you're paying them to represent you, when you can't even be there to hear what's being said. Sometimes these ex parte meetings, they will happen at the courthouse. And a lot of times, this is something we should mention.
I was in court dozens and dozens of times over 2-3 years.
But not in the courtroom.
I never stepped foot in a courtroom except to sign a paper once.
Wow.
So the entire time they sit you down in the hallway, and your attorney comes in late usually, and then they go meet with the other attorney, and then they talk about whatever the topic is of the day. And then they'll say, oh, well, then we'll go talk to the magistrate. Well, they go do that behind closed doors while I sit in the hallway. Then my attorney comes back and says, here's what the judge says that they will do.
They will do.
Yeah.
Again, this is not a full
They're
hearing.
already making a ruling without ever seeing me, never meeting my kids, just by talking to the attorneys and what the attorneys are willing to do, and then what the judge is willing to do. And they come back out in the hallway and they converse with their clients, me and my ex, and then if I'm not happy with that, they might go back in, and then all the while they're not telling you what the judge is going to do. They're telling you, well, this is what the judge would say if we were to go to trial. So don't bother going to trial. Don't bother talking to the judge, because they're already telling us what the ruling is going to be. So I had no opportunity to even incriminate myself or talk to a judge or ever have any input directly with anyone that was deciding anything about my life or my kid's life. It all happens literally behind closed doors. And then that's not to mention all of the social events that the Bar Association has with judges and magistrates and attorneys, where they play golf and they have boat trips and, fancy meetings and stuff like that. And, there's a lot of money behind that. We're just parents that are already bankrupt because of the court system. So how do we build up the funds to fight that?
Right. And you know what? A lot of people who oppose any movement towards family court reform that would include shared parenting or equal parenting, they will say most cases settle. They'll say, and some numbers are 90% of cases will settle before a court, right? As if this is some achievement. But it's because of that.
It's because they're making the decisions behind closed doors and telling you, here's what the ruling is going to be, so settle on that.
Because you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
It's not going to get better.
This is no different than the criminal system.
Right.
Yeah.
Plea bargains. This is the best deal you're going to get. Take it.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So for people to say that, most of these cases settle, yeah, that's true, because parents give up or they run out of money. And they string you along all that time because you show up thinking you're going to trial, and the trial never happens. A lot of settlements happen the day of trial or the day before trial because attorneys, especially family law attorneys, they don't want to go to trial because they don't want to have to challenge a judge or a guardian. They want you to settle, but they also, are going to do all the investigations that could possibly exist to make sure that their asses are covered and it looks like they're doing work, but really, ultimately, the kids pay the price because there's nothing left. Parents have nothing left to give.
That's actually how it works in criminal court too. The trial and the deal's made right before the day of the trial, before jury selection, things like that. You mentioned earlier that you went from having a place to stay and like your life intact to 2 days later living in your car, having your firearms turned in and all of that. You guys ever watch The Biggest Loser, the TV show?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, so all of those people go to this camp and lose all this weight and have a routine. And that routine gets shattered when they go back to normal life and they gain all their weight back. To have a parent go from working a normal job, having a consistent, stable place to live, time with their kids, to living in their car, and in that, your routine is shattered. And to go from a normal like functioning brain to having that lack of routine is hard on anyone. Nobody does well with that. That's why in the military you have your set structure of routine. We thrive in routine as a species. That I would imagine would make that even harder as a parent trying to fight for their kids, not knowing what's going on, everything being out of your control, not having a normal routine, not going to bed at the same time, not going to the gym, having your meals because you're living in your car. You said that, and that's where my brain went to that, and I wanted to touch on it. I can't imagine that is conducive to success in terms of trying to get your kids, because you now look like a fucking wreck of a human being. And like you said, of course I'm angry. Of course I'm the angry dad right now. That's crazy to think about. I never put that together either.
Yeah.
I did think about the fact that people go in there and try to make the dads look bad because, testosterone and male
Toxic
toxicity.
masculinity. Yeah.
Right.
It's a great way to lose weight, though.
Oh, I bet.
Like when from the moment that I lost my kids, I couldn't see my kids, had no contact with them for 34 days, and I didn't eat at all for a month. I was an absolute wreck, and she was there with me through a lot of that. But yeah, people were like afraid to talk to me, because they probably knew more about what was going on in my life than I did, just because I'm not allowed to talk to my ex and not allowed to talk to my kids. So yeah, it was a mess. But you know what? Going back and looking back on that now, wow, did that make me a stronger person? And I think I'm a lot more less susceptible to bullshit now. And I protect what's mine and keep my everything that I value very close to me now. And I'm less trustworthy. Maybe some of those are bad things, but
I don't think so.
I grew up a lot real quick, and I'm thankful for what I've taken out of that, because a lot of people go through this and they don't come out of it learning anything, and they stay victims, and they realize that there's a lot of good reasons to be a victim, and they want to be a victim more because that works for them. But I'm thankful for the experience, but I wouldn't wish that shit on my worst enemy.
How old were you when you went through that?
35. Yeah.
Gotcha. Sorry, babe. What were you going to say?
So you said all of that, and the first thought that came to my mind is, how did you not unalive yourself? Because that's a lot. I couldn't imagine going 34 days without seeing my children.
Well, they took his firearms. It would have been a little bit harder.
Well,
I'm sorry. I have dark humor. It's how I cope.
Yeah.
So does he. It's fine.
Yeah, that would never cross my mind.
Yeah. So you were just focused, like, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get back to my kids.
Got to get my kids.
No waiver in your mindset. Just, we have to get back to it.
Right. That's exactly right. Anything I can do to get my kids. And I want to say very plainly and clearly right now that I had one of the better cases that we've ever heard of. Because you guys have seen the film. There are people that are living horror stories and never seeing their kids again.
Yeah. It got dark. Watching your guys' documentary opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I don't understand how people can do that to people.
That actually leads into the other thing that I had written down.
Okay.
Do child prenups exist? Is that a thing? If you're getting ready to have a baby, can you create a document that protects you in the court system like you can with a marriage?
Yeah. You could do
Celebrities do that. That's basically the law we're trying to write, is a prenup for kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but the problem with the ways the laws are currently written is it would never be held up, because the only standard the judge has to uphold is what is in the best interest of the child right now. So it's up to the judge of whether they would acknowledge that or not, because you could easily say, well, you guys made that agreement years ago, and I have to decide. My job is to decide what is in the best interest of the child right now. So the way the laws are written now, I can't imagine, unless a judge wants to uphold that, why they would.
Do you guys know what they're looking for in the best interest of a child?
It changes from judge to judge.
Yeah. So there is a list of factors that all the judges have to consider, right? So if you ask an attorney or a judge, well, what is in the best interest of the child? Because it's not defined, right? I've point blank asked judges this and attorneys. Well, what is in the best interest of the child, right? Just trying to get some sort of statement from them on how they feel about what is best for children. They'll say, oh, well, it's up to the factors. I have to decide based on factors. But that's not a definition. So what? But what the laws do for judges is they say, listen, it's your job to decide what's in the best interest of the child, and you do that by considering these things. Okay, so they will tell you that the definition of the best interest of the child is factors, but they don't. There's no guidance for courts on how to weigh those factors. There's no guidance on what the factors mean or what to do with them. Like one of the factors is, whether there's domestic violence, a history of domestic violence. That sounds great. They should consider that, obviously. But there's no guidance for them on what to do with that information. So if they consider that, and maybe they find that there is, what they do with that information is 100% up to their discretion. So again, they have factors to consider, but they don't really mean anything other than the court just has to consider these things.
And because they have to decide what's best for kids, you could have two parents that are awesome, amazing parents. Well, they still have to figure out what's better. Same thing if you have two absolute shit parents. They're still going to decide what's better. So, everybody loves their kids. Not everybody. But, the people that we meet, they want to be parents. They were good parents. None of that stopped. But because they got in front of a judge who has to decide what's better, and then they have a bunch of laws that require them to use their discretion, they're going to end up making one of the good parents no longer a parent just because that's the law.
I want to burn our government down.
I've always wanted to do that.
Why haven't we done that yet?
Yeah. Washington would be stacking bodies by now.
Absolutely.
I stopped taking notes. My brain is going 1,000 miles a minute. There's a whole lot to all of this that I wasn't prepared for.
Well, the good news is that society wants this change to happen. And I think it will change, but what the judges and the bar and the attorneys and all those, they're figuring out how to keep their pockets lined. Because I really don't know that there's a good reason not to have equal parenting, unless you have some sort of bias against one, a mom or a dad. But there should be no reason for that. So judges, and they'll tell us when we talk to them that they're not opposed to equal parenting, but they need that discretion, because when there is a situation of an abusive parent or something like that there really is no evidence of, they need that discretion to make sure that the kid stays safe. Well, that's also a lot of the reasons why attorneys like it, because they get to keep the litigation going, and because there's shit being flung against, at the walls on both sides. So they get to keep litigation going. And again, that keeps their pockets lined pretty good. But I don't think, society wants equal parenting. I think the progressive younger generation wants there to be sexual equality with parents. So I think the change will happen. It's not happening fast enough, and I don't think it's going to be exactly what we want. It might not happen in our lifetimes. The laws we're trying to change in Ohio will never help me. I hope that it might help my son and her son, and our daughters equally, just because women get fucked over just as much. Not just as much, but women get fucked over hard in a lot of cases as well. So I think the change is coming. That's good news. Society wants it to happen, but the industry is going to make sure that they survive it too.
You would think that they would need some sort of burden of proof when it comes to abuse allegations, right? Especially in a DV thing. Oh, well, he's abusive. You've never once called the cops in a horrible argument and had a police report filled out. Like, you've never filed a restraining order. Now all of a sudden he's a demon. Like, you would think that would be a thing. They would want some sort of documented, even if it was talking to other people in the family. Like, hey, has you guys ever heard any of this? Like, instead of just making the decision behind closed doors that somebody's an aggressor. I don't know.
Well, and that comes down to the judge too, because there are some judges who see through that bullshit. I mean, there are. So, we'd be lying to say that no judge sees that. The problem is the way the laws are written. It gives just a lot of leeway and opportunity for people to take advantage of the law. Most of these civil courts are under the state's authority. That's why every state's a little bit different. But there are some federal laws that also trickle down into state courts, specifically family courts. And that's like the Violence Against Women Act. That is one that sounds amazing on its surface. Yes, let's protect victims of domestic violence. Why we only focus on women, I don't know, because statistically men are almost as likely to have been victims of domestic violence, but all the money is always poured towards overprotecting women, but that's a whole nother thing. But the Violence Against Women Act, which was just re-upped and strengthened by the Biden administration, basically allows a woman who is fearful for her life to get a restraining order without a full hearing and get an attorney to represent her because she's a victim, so she doesn't have to pay for that attorney.
Literally a victim of crime.
Yeah.
Without a crime being
That's right.
proven. Okay.
Yes.
Just because of the way
and
she
it's
feels.
It's handled in civil courts, family courts, not criminal courts. So it's a criminal allegation that's being handled in a civil court, which civil courts have the lower standard of evidence. And the basic criteria is a woman has to express that she is fearful for her life and safety. So a lot of women you'll see that exact language in their motion for a restraining order. They'll actually use that word because their attorneys are telling them you need to use the word fear.
Right.
Because if you say you're fearful, there's a lot of protection. Now, again, I think those laws were written originally with good intentions. We know things, now we know decades later that men are also victims, right? But no one's willing, especially at the political level, no one's willing to acknowledge that men are also victims. So all of these laws still protect women, but not men. But when you give a woman an opportunity to get a free attorney, to make accusations that aren't going to require evidence anymore, and get the upper hand in divorce, they're going to do that. There are legitimate victims, but there's also going to be people who take advantage of that. Men file false allegations against women too. This is not a gender thing. Men do it all the time, especially abusive men. It's really easy to abuse the system and use the system to abuse your ex if you're an abuser. Doesn't matter what sex you are, okay? But women, because of the Violence Against Women Act, there's funding to help them in their endeavor. So if you're a man fighting a false allegation, she's going to get the free attorneys, and you don't even, while you're still trying to figure out what's happening to you, you're also paying for it as you go along. So there is, and that's a federal law. So that definitely impacts what happens locally at the state level. So it's a big beast. I mean, we are up against it.
We know somebody who is 6'5", who is a victim of domestic violence, and he's obviously a guy. He's military. He's actually now retired, and it took 3 separate calls to get him out of the marriage that he was in and to get her like a restraining order against him. And the first time the officers were out, they laughed at him because he's 6'5" and she was like 5'4".
She's petite. Yep.
Yeah. Second time they were like, "Why didn't you just leave?" And the third time she cut him from collarbone to collarbone. He had 187 stitches. She was aiming for his throat, and the only thing that saved him is his height.
Yep.
And when they got there, she said that he had me backed into a corner and they arrested him. And the only thing that got him out of it is that his commanding officer had documentation of the previous abuses, and it was a military police situation, and he ended up getting out of that marriage. But she could have killed him in that. And there
She was trying to.
3 separate occasions where they came out and nothing was done because he's a guy. That's a very real thing. And a lot of men who experience domestic violence don't want to file that police report because it makes us look like a bitch. Like, you couldn't get away from that. Like, big, scary man,
So we hear a lot in today's society that women don't feel safe in America, and women don't have comforts here that other women don't have elsewhere in the world. I've heard women say that men have no reason to be afraid. The gentleman that you just talked about, if I were him, I'd be in fear of being with another woman, even just having a friend over.
Right.
Like, I don't know what you're going to do. Like, this woman claimed that she loved me and she wanted to be with me. That trust issues do not discriminate. Wanting to harm somebody does not discriminate. If you are a person who wants to hurt somebody else, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. I hate that there is no support higher up, like Elizabeth was saying, from the political side of things, to believe that this actually happens to men.
Yeah.
Well, I have a son who'll be 20 this year, and he doesn't want to be in a relationship.
I believe it.
And he doesn't see himself as ever getting married.
That's actually 30% of men have left the dating field and 20% of women. So we've lost 50% of the dating field. And with the standards being set now where you got it, what is it, the rule of 6s? For men, 6 figures, 6 foot, 6 inches, and a 6-pack.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, that's huge on TikTok right now.
That's disgusting.
It is.
Could you imagine if we did that for women?
I mean,
You have to be 4'9", 32, 28, 43. Like, there would be an uproar about
only
that.
if she's 5'3". No, sorry. So where can they find your documentary at? Because I think that people need to watch this.
So the documentary is on YouTube for free right now. We the Parents movie.
Gotta add
We the
movie.
Parents movie.
Otherwise, you're gonna watch something about California law and school choice.
Yes, correct. And you know, about the film. So the film is told from a parent's perspective. There have been other documentaries in the past. You know, Divorce Corp is one. It talks about the divorce engine machine.
What's a Divorce Corp?
Divorce Corp. Then there's one that's been told from the father's rights side called The Red Pill. And then a few years ago, there was one on parental alienation called Erasing Family, and talked about how easy it is to erase a parent in the system we have today. But we wanted to tell a very basic story from parents' perspective. And really, we cover how things work because I think people need to understand how the system really works because it's hard to believe. But we really wanted to show that these are regular people. It's easy to get lost in the drama with some of these extreme cases. And when you talk to lawmakers, for instance, or judges even, they always talk about the extreme cases. And they'll blow everything off as, well, that's just an exception. That's just a high conflict extreme case. That's not how most of them go. And our goal with the film was to show regular people, good parents. I mean, these are not parents who have bad histories, and I mean, these are just regular people who love their kids and want to be in their lives. And like, one of the dads was the primary stay-at-home parent, and he didn't even get the standard time with his kids. And we want people to see that these are regular people, because I don't think that change is going to happen until the entire culture embraces the problem and acknowledges the problem. Because it's so easy, like I mentioned earlier, to just blow people off as these are just crazy cases, or I'm so sorry, that sucks, and then just go on with our day. And we have to really come together as a culture. And it's got to happen with the people. The film is called We the Parents on purpose, because we have to unite. It can't be about men versus women. Can't do that. Can't go that route. They've been trying that route for 40 years and nothing's changed. We have to just unite as parents and show that we're just parents who love our kids. And no one has their best interest of children in heart more than the parents.
We've had a lot of feedback on the film, and I think almost all of it is good. Even the people complaining about the film will tell me, well, you didn't talk about parental alienation enough, or you didn't talk about the family law corruption enough. Well, you're right. We didn't. We know that. We were very purposeful in making a film about introducing the lay people out there of the horrors that can happen from family court, just very generally. Another point of feedback we get very often is people will email us or comment and say, "Hey, are you going to make another one? Because you need to tell my story." And there are hundreds and hundreds of those, and they'll give us a little, synopsis of their story, and it's horrifying. And a couple of them we've dug into, and we talk to people all the time just to give them some support. We'll talk to them on the phone or email them back and forth, and there's not really good advice we can give because it's the system and the world we live in, and they just kind of have to go through it. But the feedback has been overly good, and we're very proud of that. But what the movie is really, really about is children. We have a lot of kids, and we love the shit out of them. And I know all parents that love their kids, they need to have rights, and they need to be able to embrace the responsibilities of raising them. And we're just in a huge disadvantage when it comes to families that separate. I think separation is a horrible thing, but sometimes it's necessary. But when it does happen, we need to try to keep the family together as much as we can. And I know that's hard for some people who haven't been divorced to understand how you do that, because you literally split the family in half. But we have a family at our home. You know, we cook dinner together, we play games together, we watch movies together. Her kids, my kids, we're all together. We're a family. And I hope that that's the same case at my kid's mom's house. And I want her to have the resources she has to be a good mom, because we love children. And I think we need to create a society that raises children, you know, in a healthy way, and not, you know, safe all the time, but you know, give them all the tools that they need. And what they need is they need their parents, and the parents need to have rights and responsibilities to raise them. So that's the real point of what we're trying to do.
I have a couple of things that I want to touch on, and we got to kind of wrap this up because we have to be somewhere at noon. But for the people who say, you know, you need to touch on this or you didn't touch on this enough, you can create a film with an iPhone and a Rode mic.
He says that.
I say that all the time. It's like,
right.
Make your own fucking documentary.
Do it.
Instead of bitching about ours.
Right. You guys took a bite out of something. Right.
Yeah.
You were doing something.
A big bite.
Right. We are doing something. We do a lot of work with Change Unchained, which is do you know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay. We are donors of them. We help out with the Burn It Down Ranch. Like, we are very close to Troy. So we have a whole lot going on with that. And that's his thing. I'm taking a bite out of something. So while you're making allegations and like saying that I'm not doing enough, what are you doing? Yeah. So if you have a story that you want to tell, or you think that we're not doing enough, grab your cell phone, get a little cage so you can handhold it and stabilize, and a Rode mic.
That's right.
Get to work. You can learn to edit on YouTube. It's free.
The more the merrier. Let's go.
Yeah,
Right.
Call us. We'll help you put your documentary together, because I would love to be able to do that and continue telling these stories, but
3 years.
Let me know how you know people need help, and make your own.
Well, that follows into the next thing I was going to say. If you guys are getting a lot of emails where people want to get their story out there and you don't have time to make the documentary, we want to interview people. We are the voice of the broken. We've said that since the beginning, because all the relationship shit that we deal with are people who are broken trying to find their way through things. And if we can give advice or help or even a different perspective, it's a win. I can't give legal advice, but if somebody wants to come on here and tell about how horrible their story is and how they're overcoming it, I'll have those conversations. So we can do it through Zoom. And if you're close by, we can have you in studio, which is a work in progress. But I want to do that. I know you do too. We've talked about that at length. Kids is a big topic for us. You know, I'm a bonus parent. I fucked up bad with my kid because I had a child when I was a teenager, and I got redemption children now. So like, I get to do this over again with more patience and more understanding and better finances. And it's a very different game than what I went through the first time, because I had a horrible court experience. So it was a bad situation for me all around as well. But I think what you guys are doing is amazing. That documentary is great. I didn't walk away from that going, oh, they should have. I walked away from that going, damn, it's a struggle for men and women, because it's not just a men thing. And you guys had a story of women in there too. So I think it's important. So it is on YouTube. Is there a website? Do you have a TikTok?
WeTheParentsMovie.com
Okay.
is the website. It's very basic. So we're just a mom and pop shop. We mentioned we produced the whole thing and finance the whole thing. So we don't have a marketing team. Like, it's just us. So we have a basic website just to kind of validate that this is a real thing. But we're most active on Facebook.
Okay.
We have it. I think you created the TikTok, but nothing's on it. We just don't have time to do social media, honestly. So Facebook would be where, if there's going to be any updates, that's where they are. I will add, so Texas, the state of Texas is like crazy about the film. Like, there are some guys from Texas in it, and like organizations in Texas are all coming together and they're hosting these screenings of the film. So they rent out a theater, they screen the film, and then they bring in all of these expert panelists. And they've had I think they've done 4 events so far, and they just keep scheduling them. But the panelists they're bringing are judges. A Texas Supreme Court justice came to be on a panel, attorneys, parents, all kinds of people coming together. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of thing we hope happens with the film. Like, we want the film to be used by people. That's why it's on YouTube. We're not selling it. We're not charging for it. Use it, show it, where even if you hate the film and you hate what we're doing, show it and have it as a point of conversation, even if it's bashing us. We want people to watch it. We want people to feel empowered to share it, to talk about it. Send it to your legislator. Send it to your family. Send it to your
we've had
friends.
people make an appointment to meet with their legislator for an hour,
And
and they'll
play
bring
it.
an iPad and just set it down, and we're watching this with their legislator. So do that.
That's actually pretty smart.
Love that. That's dope.
Have you guys thought about going to Texas and sitting in on one of those things?
Yeah, we went to the very first
We
one.
did. Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you document any of it?
They recorded it.
Yeah, we had to stand up and talk for a little while, and that's all
Yeah.
out there on the YouTubes somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
Next week, I'm doing one in Ohio.
Yep.
So we're doing one in Ohio, and it'll be another screening with a panel discussion, and it'll be really great. But my true honest to God hope is that people use this as real conversation piece. Like, there have been past documentaries about family court. Nothing has happened, right? Because I think everything is like an entertainment. We're such a consumer society that we get excited about something, we watch it, and maybe we'll share it with all our friends, but it's fleeting.
Yeah.
You know, we forget about it tomorrow. And I'm hoping that people actually have conversations and come up. I want brainstorm sessions. I want this to be a brainstorm session, and people actually come with real plans, real ideas, and actually shift things. And but it's got to happen amongst the people, because the people in power are not going to change anything. So it's got to be us.
I think that, do you know how many views that it has on YouTube? Have you guys looked
Not
into
many.
that?
I want to say 15,000 maybe.
Well, we promoted it. We did it through our Discord and Patreon, so at least probably 500 of those are us.
Great.
But we'll link it in the bio of this, or in the description. We'll put it onto Spreaker as well, so that we can try to get that out to as many people as we can. If you guys are listening to this podcast and you watch the documentary, we tell you all the time the best way to support what we're doing is to share the content. If you watch the documentary and you feel like it's something that is going to benefit somebody, or you know somebody who's struggling with the court system, that documentary might give them hope, because there is success stories at the end of it. Right? So, like, share the content, get it out there so that people can see it. I think that this is something that's going to actually make change. It may, like you said, it may not be in your lifetime, it might be in your son's, but something has to change. There are a lot of broken families out there, and this might be the step to correcting that. So, final question, and then I'm done. I'm not going to ask anymore. Because there are so many so many children growing up in broken homes, where I think that the last study done was that 1 in 4 children are growing up in a single parent house now, which is a fucking lot.
Yep.
A quarter of all kids. So as that's becoming a thing, and people are stepping out of the dating game because they're seeing all their friends going through divorce, and they lived through a divorce of their own or broken home, do you think that that's going to help change the laws and the court system? Because that is a very large percentage of people who have experienced this now by proxy. Parents got divorced, whatever. How do you think that's going to look moving forward?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the people who make the decisions for change are not keen on change. So it's a big task. I think, so the National Parents Organization has actually polled a lot of states and voters. And I mean, voters overwhelmingly support the idea of shared parenting. Like, hands down. Like, in Ohio, it's like 87%.
Wow.
So the people want this. Okay. People know this is common sense. You don't have to convince anyone. Like, I mean, I think you said there were some things that we said that were just, you're learning things, but the idea that kids need both parents, that wasn't new to you, right?
Right, not at all.
And I don't think it's new to anyone, really. I think most people recognize that. Even people in high conflict situations, they just think that they're the better parent. But nobody really thinks that children don't need both parents. But the laws aren't changing. So, and that's because the people up at the top. So I think it's a really uphill battle, because there's a lot of money at stake. I mean, that's what we're fighting, is the people who benefit financially from the current system. I mean, we're not going to go into it obviously now, but even child support. I mean, there's so many different avenues of in financial streams in family court that, unless the people really, it's almost like a revolt. Like, it has to be a big push from the people. Just like, when we getting women the right to vote. I think this is a civil rights issue.
I agree.
And we have to have that same oomph from the people. I think it's possible, because everyone agrees. Okay. But it's the doing. We have to get past talking about it. We have to get past venting about it and fighting each other, and actually do it.
The fastest way to create change is mass noncompliance.
Right.
I mean, you're going to tell me I can't see my kids? Fuck you. You're not.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you've been broken down and, everything's been taken away from you by the court, and then you have to beg the court to get it back, you're afraid of them. And there's a lot of fear. So there's a good faction of us in the equal shared parenting movement that are just like, we're not gonna take this much longer. And, that might be the fastest route. Right now we're trying the proper channels of getting this done. But I don't think people should be screwing with parents and with their kids. And we're trying to create some awareness, trying to head that off before there's a civil war that keeps people from breaking up families.
You said that mass non-compliance is the fastest way to change, and you're right. Gandhi was the most powerful man who ever lived because of that.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything that you want to add, babe?
I think you guys did great on this. I think you're doing the thing you want to do. And thank you for coming again. This has been a really dope experience.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this. I'm also very impressed by this, by the way.
Okay.
So, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Watch the movie. That's the message that we created, and I wanted to give it to the world, and it's out there. So
and use
excited
it
for people
and
to
share
watch
it.
Yep.
It's out there for the world. It doesn't even worry me. People are going to, it's the internet. Everyone has it. Everyone can use it and take clips from it and make their own little videos about it. And I use it. Like we aren't coming after anyone for copyright. Like we just want it to be talked about, and we want it to be seen.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you guys for coming, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for having us.